Welcome back to Comics with Drew. I'm Drew, and Happy New Year! This is another video, and it's a video about comics this time. And I rarely see in comics these days what I would consider great writing. And that's not to say that the writers that are working are necessarily bad. It's just that for the most part, they aren't really transcendent. And that's something that's actually kind of sad. So, you got writers that have given styles or specific ways of saying things, and you can kind of pick out their work. But recently, for me anyway, I have come across a writer that really stands out. And I think this particular individual has the chance to be one of the all-time great writers for comics. The writer I'm talking about is Ram V. Now, you may know Ram for currently writing Carnage, and there was a new number one Carnage fairly recently. I picked it up. It's the first Carnage book I've ever read, and I've kept it on my pull. I've not done any reviews about it, well, except for the first couple of issues, because of the fact that I've had a lot of other things going on. However, Rom really stands out to me in his economy of terms, and the way he writes is that he doesn't write things that don't need to be there. So I did a video about this, and where I said that I actually used a quote from Alan Moore, and it was something to the effect of, this is what the typical writing should have, how many words you should have, how many lines you should have in a panel on a page, etc. And you should never write something that doesn't actually convey what you're trying to communicate. And a lot of writers don't understand this. They think that if they just say a lot of stuff, if they write a lot of stuff, then it'll be fine. And people will just like, oh, this is great. But the fact of the matter is that comics are a sequential art form. So it's an art form, and it's sequential, and requires two things working together. It's kind of like a song. You've got great lyrics and you've got great music. And Rom, being paired up with several different artists across these titles, is doing a killer job. I mean, the dude is just crushing it. So that brings me to the reason for today's video. And I said I was going to do this on Twitter. Here's the tweet. Boom, right here. And this is actually from Detective Comics 1067, right here. This page made me go out and buy 5 comic books. So that's how much I like it. So we're going to take it from the top here. So we have Batman, right? And he is trying to find out who is trying to take over the city, right? I mean, you need to read the book. I'm not going to get into it, but suffice it to say, Batman shows up at a place where people are not coming out that are going in, and he's trying to find out what's going on. And it turns out that this is where Mr. Freeze has set up his lair. So then Batman says to Freeze, and Freeze has got him at his like frozen gunpoint because he wants Batman to keep his distance. But Batman says to Freeze, he says, "Why are you helping me, Victor?" And then Mr. Freeze says, I, I just, I love how this comes out of his mouth. He says, "I used to think you and I were very different once." Right? Okay, so let's just stop right there. I used to think you and I are very different ones. You don't see conversations like this in comics, right? You don't see, I mean, here you've got Batman and you've got Mr. Freeze, and he's got a gun pointed at Batman, and usually there's some pithy one-liner, there's some kind of snarky, I'm going to take over the world, or I'm going to get you, Batman, or whatever. You don't you don't ever see a character who is broken inside, right? You don't ever see a character like that who is thoughtful. You don't see villains in comics written from a human perspective. So when you're looking at, I mean, here you've got Victor Freeze, and he's thinking about Batman. He could have killed Batman, right? But he didn't. And the reason he didn't was that he was seeing something in himself in Batman. And so he goes, "I used to think you and I were very different once when I was trying to save Nora and you kept getting in the way. But now Nora's gone and she doesn't need me. She says she never did. And here I stand toiling each night, building statues to the memory of a woman still frozen somewhere inside of me. I see you now. I understand. The Dark Knight who battles each night to preserve his innocent vision of this broken city. Gotham is your Nora, isn't she? the, Rom, Rom, if you ever watch this, I want to say thank you, because when someone takes the time to understand a character this well, and writes the character in such a way to make an observation that is not one note, it's not cartoonish, it's a really deep observation about, you know, the beautiful symmetry of the idea of what Batman is and what Batman's trying to do, right? Batman's trying to do something that's futile, right? Really. Let's just be honest with ourselves. Gotham is not exactly ever going to be one of the top places to live in the United States. Okay, in fact, I question the sanity of anybody that actually lives in Gotham based upon the stuff that happens there all the time, just from a perspective of just reality, right? Freeze, on the other hand, is doing the same thing. He is trying to do something that's futile. He is trying to save his wife, and despite the best efforts that he has, despite all of his intellect and all of his technology, he can't ever seem to get what he's looking for, and he's constantly fighting for it. These two characters are mirror images of each other in what they're attempting to accomplish. And very rarely do you ever see someone who can come along and look at these characters and, from an analysis standpoint, recognize how to get them to communicate with each other to make sense. The bottom line here is, in this story, at this point, Victor freezes Batman but doesn't kill him. So what you really need to do is come up with a way to prevent Freeze from killing Batman, right? Because he's got him at his mercy. And you don't want to go for, Batman's got whatever different thing to rescue himself from. What you want is, you want something that is different, that adds to the story and actually adds to the character. Victor Freeze is a unique character in that he doesn't have your typical motivations that most villains do. And he actually has an honorable motivation. I think everybody could agree. It's just that he takes it too far, and he hurts people in the pursuit of his actual goal. And so, knowing that this is part of the nature of this character, Rom has taken it upon himself to, use the character to display that understanding of what Batman is and to find common ground. That's really what we need in not just comics, but we need that in general these days. There are so many people that want to go to war with each other on social media, or in any kind of realm of debate where they want to go hard. It's always about tribes. It's always about being on your side and in your tribe, and you're not going to think about what other people think. You're not going to try to understand why people might come to a different opinion from yours honestly, and that's something that we don't have enough of in society these days. And that's what Rom is doing with Victor Freeze and Batman here. So this is a situation where you have mortal enemies, really, honestly, and Freeze is the one that take a step back, right? Freeze could have pushed the advantage, but he says, "You know what? I'm gonna back this up here, and I'm gonna get the 30,000 foot view of this situation." And to me, I can see that Batman is a lot like myself, and I'm trying to be better. And you know what? I'm gonna help Batman be better by letting him know that I see where he's coming from, and because I see where he's coming from, and I've been there, I'm going to take the step to push this relationship forward more productively, into a more productive place. And this is beautiful writing. It really is. I mean, you don't you just don't have a character pointing a gun at another character saying, "You know what, man? I feel you, bro. I feel your pain, dude. And Victor Freeze doing this is just astounding, and it's you really should get the book. So you should, I know I like to do a lot of videos where I'm hating on books or I'm being super critical of books, but and this Detective Comics run may not be your jam. Okay, I'll fully admit that some people might not like it, and it's a bit of a slow burn for me personally, right? But when you see a page like this, what it tells you is that the writer really understands the characters, and so you should give them time to get through what they're trying to get through as far as the story is concerned. So again, I've read these 6 issues. Presently, Rom is a great writer, but they're not the best in my opinion as far as they're not really doing it for me personally. They are not bad books by any stretch of the imagination, but this page alone was so strong it made me buy the entire run. Again, this page right here is probably the best page that I've read this entire year. The best single page of a comic book. And that's saying a lot. I've read some really good work this year, especially with Rom and Carnage. I've read a lot of great work with Mark Waid, with World's Finest, and also with Chip Zdarsky, who's just crushing it with Batman and Daredevil. His Daredevil run is just on another level. But that's all I really wanted to say about this. Again, it's Detective Comics 1067, and it's got Victor Freeze, Mr. Freeze arc in it, and I highly recommend that you give it a shot and take a look at it. If this page right here is uh, a taste of what's to come, this could very well be one of the greatest runs in Detective Comics history. Okay, and I'm not giving you hyperbole. I mean, it could very well be that. But if you have a writer who understands how to write characters like this, you can get some really amazing work. So again, thank you, Rom. If you watch this, thank you for writing it. And everybody else, again, thanks for watching Comics with Drew. I'm Drew, and I'll be uploading more videos again this week, hopefully. I'm doing my best. But again, thanks for watching Comics with Drew. I'm Drew, and I'll catch you next time.